Good morning. We're at Chapter 9 for contracts, and we're looking at performance, breach, and remedies. And this is Part 1 of Chapter 9. We kind of went over most of this on Friday, but for those of you who missed it or need a review, let's go over it one more time. For a contract to be considered complete, it has to be performed, or it's called the performance of it. And when it is said to be performed, the promises have to be complete within that contract, or it can be substantially complete, meaning it could be maybe 92% complete, or complete enough that it meets the requirements of the contract. It could be complete to the satisfaction of the other signer of the contract or the other party, or they could look at it and say, wow, this is a material breach, which means a major breach or of disagreement in the contract. And it could be called performed and then either rewritten at that time, or there could be action started in court for it. And there's something called anticipatory repudiation, which means the party who knows they will not be able to complete the contract will say, I cannot do this, and that's called anticipatory repudiation, saying that they cannot complete the contract. The other thing is, you can have it completed, or you can have it considered complete by agreement, and you can have it by mutual rescission, which means both parties agree that the contract should be completed and redrawn, or it should be canceled and redrawn. You can have it by novation, which means you can assign it to part of it to another party, or you can give your half of it to another party. And you can have it by accord and satisfaction, which means certain parts of it could be modified with the agreement on both sides, so that the accord meets the satisfaction of both sides. Then it could be considered complete in performance by operation of the law, which means the courts could come in and say it is performed, and that would be by material alteration within the contract if somebody on either side changed the contract without the approval of the other. Statutes of limitations, meaning that the contract had went way past when it was supposed to be completed. One party could go bankrupt, at which point they couldn't complete the contract. There could be impossible performance, which would deal with maybe the death of one of the parties, maybe the again, that might go into the bankruptcy. It's just impossible to perform the contract. You could have commercial impracticality, meaning the bid could have been given and the contract signed, and economic conditions changed, and something that used to cost maybe 10 cents a ton now costs $10 a ton. So it's just virtually impossible and impractical to complete that contract. And then there's frustration of purpose, which is very close to impossible performance or commercial impracticality. So now we're going to look at a question, and question 1 is, let me find it here. Question 1 is, the performance of a contract includes which of the following? Select all that apply. So moving on now, we're going to look at damages from a breach. And before you can have damages from a breached contract, you have to have the terms in the contract have to be sufficient enough for the courts to be able to determine the amount of damages to award. So there has to be injury, or there has to be evidence of damages. You can't just say, oh, I think I lost $20 on this. You have to have proof of that. So types of damages are compensatory, which are the direct costs and losses coming from the contract. You can have consequential, which are what they call indirect and foreseeable losses. Consequential may be lawyers' fees, anything that would come up that is not on the contract, but since it has been breached, may be incurred due to the breach of the contract. You have punitive, which is to punish the breaching contract party. Those are rather rare. And then you have nominal, which is usually a small fee. You may have court costs of $250, and you'll see a fee of $1 or an award of $1, which is called a nominal award. It's just to recognize it was wrongdoing. It's usually very small. So those are the 4 types of damages. You could have mitigation of damages, and usually that happens, let's say that a contract was halfway complete, and the party either couldn't or wouldn't complete the contract for whatever reason, and you found somebody else to do it for, say, $500. Well, you've already paid the other people $1,500 for that job, but you got it done for $500. You could, that's called mitigating, which means you have completed the contract to the best of your ability and had it completed by a third party, and then you would only sue for the damages, 500 minus the 1,500. So you try to lessen the amount that you will sue for. This also happens in employment issues. Simply, let's say that you are let go for unfair reasons and you have lost all your income. Well, instead of sitting around suing them for a year's worth of wages, the court would look to see if you tried to find another job, and then the difference between the amount of money that job paid you and what you would have been paid from the other position would be the award. And that's called mitigation of damage. You try to lessen the damages as much as you can. And finally, there's liquidation of damages, which is simply you will put the amount of damages in the contract in case of a breach. So it's set before you even start the contract. And let's look at question 2 now. And question 2 is true or false. Mutual rescission could involve writing of a new contract. Mutual rescission could involve the writing of a new contract. True or false? Now, if we look down at the remedies, equitable remedies, you could have restitution. You could return the goods and that were received in the contract, and that would be it. You could have specific performance, which says, no, I don't want anything back, I want the contract completed, and the courts can order that. You can have reformation, which is to rewrite the contract so that it's more doable for both parties. Or you could have a quasi-contract recovery, which means there really wasn't a contract, but there was an implied contract, either by action or by task, and the courts would ask that that be recovered. So those are your remedies. And here's just a really great little picture, I thought, or diagram to remember. Your damages can be compensatory, they can be consequential, they can be punitive, they can be nominal, and they can be liquidated. And then you have the other options of rescission and restitution, specific performance, or reformation. And we'll have another question, question 3, and that's select all that apply. 4 types of damages are, and then there's a group listed, and you select all that apply. And I'd like to just review a moment so we don't forget where we've come from. This is where we started, types of contracts. And we had the bilateral and unilateral contract. Bilateral was the promise for a promise, and unilateral unilateral was a promise for an act. And then both of these types of contracts can have all of this applied to it. And this is a really good diagram to keep handy when you're trying to sort out what type of contract you have. So just a little bit of review. And now, question 4. Executory means that a contract has been completed. And that is the tail end of part 1. Thank you.